you doing?
Good, good.
I was just checking out.
Modular record.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
awesome. So your studio space, is it a separate location or is it a home studio?
It's a separate building, but it's at our house.
Oh, okay, because it
Yeah.
looked almost, from what I've seen when you've posted on Facebook, it's almost looked like it was like a restored church or something. The way that with the
Yeah, a lot
tall.
of people have just said that. Yeah, we didn't intend for it to look that way, but we wanted it to look like it was original to the house,
Uh-huh.
in period. So we used a lot of architectural salvage stuff.
Welcome, Viktor. Thank you for doing this. Many of you tuning in know who Viktor Krauss is. Viktor is a bass player as well as composer and has played with the likes of Lyle Lovett, I believe, since '94, and has played with musicians such as Bill Frisell, with Robert Plant, his sister Alison Krauss, and the list goes on and on and on. I'd say your music, it's been played in different films and is really interesting music. I've seen you live a number of times in the Natural Library series, as well as at Rudy's, and I've always enjoyed your group very much. I also saw your collaboration with Gilchrist,
Dave Gilchrist.
Maeve Gilchrist, which was beautiful,
Yeah.
with Jordan Perlson was playing drums. Welcome to Clif Chats. My name's Clifford Kaufman, and I'm in Nashville as well, but we're in two locations, and I'm a percussionist, drummer, educator. I've always admired your work, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So we were talking a little bit before about your studio, and is this something that you've wanted to do for a long time, or is it something that you decided to do sooner because of when COVID started and people were not traveling and all that?
Well, it's something that kind of we'd been planning for a very long time, and I always was working out of the house and working with other people, and it's a lot to ask of your family and the clients, to come in and work in a personal space and tiptoe and it's always kind of a position, I think, for the people that I work with to kind of feel like, oh, okay, I'm visiting someone's house, and it just be nice to take it to another level here and
Uh,
have a dedicated space, and it's always felt like, well, okay, if I'm working away from the house, my concentration level will be so much higher than if I know that the kids are there, or if I'm doing something, over and over, a certain passage over and over again, knowing that I'm probably going to drive somebody crazy with that. That would be nice not to, to have that extra level. And so, since being able to move in, it's been a wonderful thing to realize. And we did all the stuff to make it as quiet inside as possible. We built from the ground up, and it's a building that's detached from our house, and though on the same property. And so we did everything that they prescribed to do in terms of soundproofing as much as we could, with the walls, the independent walls, or the double walls, and the floating floor. And we also did some stuff with the windows, that with a company that's fittingly called Soundproof Windows, which is a company out of Reno, Nevada,
mm.
that primarily does studio windows and for people that live near airports. Against our wishes of our contractor and our sound consultant and architect, we ended up putting these 9-foot windows. I'll turn around here. They're big, and it was like putting a giant hole in a space that's supposed to not have sound coming through. And the windows, they're windows inside of the antique windows, and it was kind of a moment of truth when we put them in. Is this really going to do what it did? And it really did.
Oh, as far as the sound not getting escaping
Yeah,
so much.
yeah. We live in a pretty noisy neighborhood, as wherever you are, as with everywhere else in Nashville, that you can't get away from construction or
As you say that, there's a siren going by in my place.
oh yeah, yeah. Or people mowing their lawns, or leaf blowing, or the one that's the most irritating for me is the backing up truck sound, where it could ruin a take, or just, like, for me, that sound just kind of drives me up the wall. So now not having that is just been great,
And so you've tested it and it succeeded.
Yes, yes. It was it was kind of, we had kind of planned for one type of system for walls, and which naturally had a good rating for sound, for for masking outdoor sound, and then we found out that we couldn't use that material just based on the layout of our yard. It was a prefabricated material that naturally had that reduction in there.
Uh,
And so then we ended up going with conventional stick frame. And so that's when we hired a guy named Zach Marsengill from Audio Virtual Acoustics. And he kind of was our guide in terms of, all the different steps that can be made to prevent sound coming in and out. And so there was the double insulation and then the clip system, which means that none of the drywall is touching the stud. So it's on this metal grid and a certain type of insulation and all that kind of stuff. And it seemed like a lot of stuff to do. It ended up being a bit more expensive, but really happy we did it. And
yeah, it seems like just from following the process as you've updated it on Facebook, it seems like you really made sure that you covered all of the bases as far as making the space be the type of space that you want it to be.
yeah, I was really happy with that. And then the same guy who was our kind of our guru ended up being the one that designed all the panels and diffusers, and he did an ultrasound of the room, and prior to it being everything being put up, it really did sound like a gymnasium.
Hmm.
It didn't sound so great. I was like, oh gosh, what do we do? And as soon as he put it in, even without hanging them, just setting it in the room, what an amazing thing he did right away. And, yeah.
And do you feel so? We had talked a year or two ago. I was inquiring about having you record on a project of mine, and you'd mentioned that drum tracking was not, you would recommend going somewhere else. Or do you feel like this space is now set up where you will feel good about tracking drums there?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I did my first drum tracking day yesterday in here, and it was actually Jordan.
Okay, yeah.
And it was, and I don't claim to know anything about doing that. I watched a couple of videos on with George Massenberg's miking technique,
Okay.
and I had, there was no way I was going to get close, but I had enough microphones and kind of have been around it enough that it was like, well, here's some approximations of some stuff, and I'm sure, I it's now being mixed by someone else, or is going to be mixed by someone else, and I'm sure they'll find it, without its challenges. But I mean, it was just like I was happy, that it worked, and
Yeah.
and hopefully I'll get better along the way, and I guess I'll have to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great to have a space. And so did you design the taller ceilings to give it sort of an acoustic vibe of some sort?
Well, sort of, I think, I didn't, it was kind of funny when we met with our architect, who was Mitch Hodge, and our backyard sits on a pretty good hill, and for kind of, I wanted the building to look, period with the original building. I mean, our house is from 1905, and so we
Mhm.
wanted this building to almost look like it was always here. And so we mimicked a lot of the same things, but it was one thing that we wanted to kind of keep a consistent roof line from the back of the structure to the front. And so in turn for having that, the because we're on a hill, the first space is a little bit, lower ceiling. And then once you get into where I'm sitting, which is kind of the main control room, the room got really high. And I don't know if that was an intent. I didn't plan on that. And when we had it, when it built, it was like, wow, this is tall.
Mhm.
And but I think it turned out okay. Just
Yeah,
being,
it's a great looking space.
oh, thank you. Yeah.
And so how many different rooms are there?
Well, there's kind of a lounge area which became kind of the drum space, which is a little splashier space, and
Mhm.
we wired it accordingly to be able to have, to be able to feed microphones. So we did panels in each space, and then there's an isolation room, vocal space,
Mhm.
and then the main kind of control room. And I most of the time work by myself, so I kind of wanted to have something that was versatile enough that I could mix in the same space as that I'm playing. And so since
Mm,
it's me, to not to kind of dart between certain rooms if I'm doing an overdub on bass, even though you can do it remotely, I just kind of wanted it to always be in the same space.
mm.
So our engineer, the sound consultant, found that it was a little bit of a challenge to kind of have it be that way. And but so far so good.
Mhm. And so when you tracked yesterday, it was with Jordan Pearlson on drums and Jeff Coffin, is that
Yeah,
correct? On saxophone? Did you all track in separate rooms or in the
yeah,
same room? You did. Okay.
yeah. So Jordan was in the kind of the splashier room and for the drums, and which I think really worked nicely.
So when you
And
say splasher, that's just kind of the quality of the room, the sound
yeah,
quality.
yeah, just maybe a little less dead, a little bit more of a room sound, and then
Mm.
and then then Jeff was in the vocal room, isolation room, and then I was in kind of in the main room, which is the deadest of the.
And were you all able to have line of sight,
Yeah,
or
enough. I could see Jeff. We've got a window. I mean, you could see in the background. There's a window, so Jeff and I could see each other well. And then the door right behind me, there's a window in there, so I could see Jordan okay. Jeff couldn't see Jordan over, but he had a great suggestion about possibly putting a mirror on the. We have a bathroom as well,
Mhm.
and putting a mirror on there so that he could see
Yeah.
behind him. And I think that would work really nicely.
And so the sound you're hearing was through headphones with,
Yes.
and so did you bring an engineer in to do that session, or did you
No, I did.
you did everything?
I just, yeah, it was interesting kind of setting up for that. And I mean, I've done a bit of engineering in the past, but to kind of go into to kind of alternate between right and left brain was a little.
I'll bet
Yeah.
that can be a lot.
Tricky.
And are you using Pro Tools?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's great that you have that space now, and it
Yeah.
sounds like it's ready to go.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I'm really pleased with it. And I don't know, I'll kind of twirl around here. It's
Yeah.
this is kind of the it's always kind of a coordination thing here. But I'm a bit of a gear junkie here.
Uh-huh. What's that board?
It's an old Yamaha PM 2000, and which was apparently the 1000 was the Neve clone, and this is the API clone,
Uh-huh.
sort of, you know of that time period. And I used it a little bit on drums, and
Collection.
yeah,
That's
and
great.
mainly it just looks cool. But so I'm a bit of a
Whoa.
bit of a
You
nerd.
really do have a collection of synths.
Yeah, I kind of got into, I'd always been a fan of analog synths and pedals and instruments, and I started really kind of getting into them after I did my first solo album, and then just kept buying them, and now all that stuff got kind of trendy, so I don't buy them as often because they've gotten
They're expensive.
they've gotten pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your go-to synths?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, gosh, I mean, this, if you want the classic, this kind of does, this is like the Mercedes of that, the Jupiter 8
Uh,
for classic synth of that, 80s type of stuff. This probably this synth, this beat up ARP Selena probably ends up using more than anything else, just as the string pad. It's almost like an oral exciter with pitch. It does something that's so interesting, where you put a high note on something and it suddenly opens the track up to suddenly you're hearing all this wonderful space. You're just kind of like, it's almost like a pitch you're telling you, oh, okay, there's high end information. And I mean, I love this Oberheim OB8, which is kind of a recent acquisition, but that seems to be working. And then this Prophet 5
mhm.
gets a lot of use.
Yeah, I know the names, but I don't know a lot about synths.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, what kind of projects do you end up using those on?
Gosh, I try to put it on as much as I can because I have it, but
Anywhere where you think it'll fit, it'll.
yeah, I produced a record that isn't out yet. That was for a woman named Heather Bond, and we used almost everything in here, and that was
Mm,
back when I was in the other space. But it seemed to work with
mhm.
with the music, and but yeah, that's a lot of synths and little bits of each, and
And so that sort of project, is it someone you've worked with a good bit before where you have creative license, or how did that
well,
work
that
out?
one, yes, that particular record that we had written a tune because we had a publisher in common, and so we wrote this one song that we'd written a couple songs, but the second song was really clicked, just the whole thing, and
Mm,
it seemed to make sense to kind of keep going, and then that kind of blueprint of that song kind of fed all the other ones. So yeah, we had complete creative license on that, and we rewrote the pretty much the whole album together. And
so were you connected by someone, a mutual person who you both were writing for, or label, or?
yeah, it was our publisher that
Okay.
said, "Oh yeah, you guys might hit it off," and it yeah, it really worked, I thought.
So did the not touring due to COVID, did that speed up the process of, or the idea of creating the studio?
No, not necessarily. We had kind of worked on it. I mean, we had done plans for it back in 2017, and but then kind of thought, well, maybe we won't do it, and maybe we'll do it, and then I think it was, gosh, may have been November of 18 where we had really kind of committed to doing it.
Hmm.
It took a little over a year for it to from where we broke ground to when it was. So we were deep in it when COVID hit, and
Okay. Well,
uh,
that's good timing, I guess. I mean,
yeah, yeah. And in fact, if I hadn't been touring, some of the stuff may have turned out differently. I mean, we're kind of overseeing it and probably being an obnoxious client to our to our contractor, just because we're probably being helicopter
it's like,
parents.
oh, it's like a baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so not how often were you touring before COVID? What kind of tour schedule did you have?
It was actually a lot last year, and there were certain years where we weren't working as much, and then which actually it ended up being kind of working out, just had we known that
Hmm.
this was all going to happen. But it was a lot last year. I think there were three kind of, well, there was one significant run during the summer, and then two other ones that were a little shorter,
Hmm.
but maybe probably 5.5 months of
Oh, wow. And that's
tour.
all with Lyle Lovett?
That was what with Lyle.
Uh-huh.
And then so that was a lot. And but I mean, he would always kind of do, I mean, like, I mean, it was almost guaranteed that there would be a summer tour that
Hmm.
would be close to 2 months, and then maybe something a little less in the
Hmm.
fall or in the spring. And so this is the most I've been home in a long time, I mean, which has been great, actually. Just to be home with the kids, and
Yeah, I'll
even
bet.
though it's a even though that's a great gig, it's been, I've got a daughter who's going to be going to college next year, so it's certainly nice to be home with
Yeah,
them.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. And so and when do you tour with other folks, or is it typically uh with Lyle Lovett
Yeah,
mostly?
it's been pretty much with Lyle, I mean, for a number of years I was doing some touring with Bill Frisell or with Jerry Douglas. I did a Carly Simon tour years ago, and
Hmm.
yeah, but and then a couple of handfuls, Shelby Lynn really early on, and
Hmm.
but that's been kind of been the mainstay for all of these years.
Yeah. And so when before COVID, when you're not touring, you would write for the publisher. What else? What other type of work
Well,
would you
either
do?
either session work or either writing, yeah, either for the publisher. I don't. I've got an administrative deal, but it's kind of an active president who gets me to write with other people,
Mm,
and either write or produce for other people, and
hmm.
just recording and whoever will have me on stuff.
Yeah. Well, how does that typically happen that you become a producer or brought into a project?
Well, historically, it's usually me being, like, I don't know, it's when I don't get that many calls to do it, and it's something that, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I get calls from people that have heard previous work and have
Mhm.
liked a previous project.
So they know your work and they like it and they'll get in touch. Is that
Yeah,
typically how it is?
yeah. I mean, at certain years, I do more than others, but usually it stems from me being a loudmouth if it's somebody I like to work with. Where it's going like, okay, and that's historically a lot of the time is like, I think people like to know that you care. If I don't end up saying a whole lot, a lot of the time it means it's, oh, well, okay, it will kind of work itself out. And
Hmm.
it kind
So
of helps.
meaning does that mean that you really like someone's music? You say, hey, I'd really like to work with you. Is it that simple
Yeah,
or?
or usually, yeah, it will either that way or I'll start kind of saying, oh yeah, you could do this, or you could do this, or try
Mhm.
this, and then if it spawns into something that turns into, it's hopefully that they've liked those ideas, and then if I really feel passionate about it, then I'll say, boy, I'd really like to do this
Mhm.
for you. And so that's I don't know, it's kind of worked out that way, and most of the time I end up still liking the people at the end. Yeah.
That's always a good thing. And how did you meet Bill Frisell?
That was in, gosh, that was in 95.
Hmm.
And there were a couple people that he was going to be doing the Nashville record. This was he and Kyle Lenning had been talking about this project. That was through Nonesuch,
Mm.
or I was trying to think of either Nonesuch or Electra, but somehow they had made a connection, and then there were a number of people that had been asked to do it. Thought that it was purely recommendation from this kind of small group of people saying, Viktor would be really good for this, and I
Mhm.
had never heard anything that he had done.
Oh, you hadn't? Okay.
No.
Oh, wow.
And
Because you
uh,
sound to me hearing both of you or hearing both of your work, you sound to me like kindred spirits musically.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and I remember this, and I remember talking to him on the phone. He says, "Well, he seems like a really nice guy," and but I still hadn't heard any music, and I remember going. It was in Sound Emporium A, and I had just gotten off of being on tour with Lyle for a little bit, and so I was in really good shape, musically,
Hmm.
physically, and we recorded at Sound Emporium, and it was a tune that didn't make the record, but I remember playing it with him, and it was just a trio. And as we were doing it, I was going, "Oh my gosh, isn't this is amazing?"
Mm.
And like how special right away. It's just like I love film music and soundtrack music, and it felt like there's always, like his playing always seems like there's some you know, he's got some picture going through his head, and it's easy to kind of feel that.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I guess in kindred spirit, I might feel accurate, because
Yeah.
I love, that there's some kind of an emotional content that's going along with the music,
Do you think your music changed having, once you started to work with Bill Frisell?
Oh yeah, I was definitely influenced,
Mm.
as with anyone you work for a while, like with Lyle, I found, you know, just a common, like, I don't know, certain relationships on where you put a third, in the root, or, and very specific things, and where a lot of his five chords are always have the, with a third, and I was like, oh, okay, I
And
want
when
to
you say with the third, are you saying you're playing the third
Yeah, well, like, I don't know, like a classic, like first inversion, or
Mm.
that kind of stuff, where like being kind of aware of Lyle's chord of voicings, like, do I follow
Oh,
him,
so
or
he's maybe playing a first inversion, so you're playing that as well? Is
yeah, I
that?
might play
Uh,
that as opposed to cloud it with a root underneath it, if it
uh-huh.
if they're close to each other.
And do
Uh,
you think does some of that come from just the long musical relationship that you've had?
Yeah, or kind of getting excited, getting inside of his music, kind of feeling like
Hmm.
that. And then, with Bill, especially on the first record that I wrote, the first record that I had come out, that I wanted to write that material with him and Jerry and all the other, my sister and Steve Jordan in mind for that. So, that I was writing for a certain cast.
Yeah.
So yeah, so definitely. Yeah, definitely is.
And did you meet Steve Jordan on that session?
No, I'd worked with him a couple times prior,
Hmm.
and but he was kind of the last component to be added to that cast, but I wanted there to be a bit of power connected with that, and so that he would be, he would kind of deliver that and have that, you know, all the Steve Jordanisms that you want, and to have
Uh-huh.
that character on there.
And what are some things that you took away from working with Steve Jordan?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Everyone kind of offers something different,
Mhm.
It's just, geez.
I know that's kind of, well, if you think of something,
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it's just kind of an undeniable pocket.
no, there's a feel. There's
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
yeah. And what about, you've worked with some great drummers like Matt Chamberlain, I believe.
Mhm.
What are some things that stood out or have stood out when playing with
Gosh, he's so much fun to play with. It's just there's such a conviction about him.
him?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I know I've always said this about him, and I hope he doesn't. If he's heard it, I always think there's a middle finger element to his
What
playing.
what do you, can you go more into
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's just, like he's aware of the sound and he's just aware of, okay, here it is, and here it is it's almost like a sound, for someone who's recorded as much as he played on my second record.
Mm,
I knew that it would be very different than what Steve had offered.
mm,
And, almost kind of, almost more from a rock and roll space, but this whole other element of, as Tori Amos says, the human loop, and that there's other details that are only possible kind of with him. There's just like, I mean, like, I don't know, I mean, like the one headlight, the wallflowers, it's unmistakable that it's him. Or,
mm,
or Criminal by Fiona Apple, you know, it's just kind of like or, oh, there's an amazing live footage of Tori Amos's God, where it's just like, well, that's him, you know, he's such a personality, and enough of a chameleon that he could be anything you want him to be, but still, it's like, I don't know, it's a character you would hire a certain actor because you want that, you
mm.
know.
And
And
it seems for me, from the little I know of him, that he's always searching too, and always like experimenting with sounds and
oh
and
yeah,
trying
yeah.
different things.
One of my favorite things that he's done, he did it on my record and then for another record that I produced, where well, there's two things that I really love that he does. One of my favorite overdubs is him playing. Took out his car keys and laid them on a sheet and played those. And it's just an incredible sound, right away.
Mm,
And another one is he's got this crazy little kit where it's like a snare drum, the size of a 8-inch snare drum, or even maybe 6-inch snare drum,
mm,
and just a tiny kit, and then he's got this crazy thing. Everything sounds high pitched, but you would swear it's some kind of drum machine. And and so he's playing all this kind of crazy little subdivisions, and then there's the whole electronic element that he's got going. And we did some, I did some Bill Frisell dates where he was, had this whole electronic rig set up, and it just worked effortlessly with what he was doing. It was just another part of him. And
are there live recordings of that?
oh, I don't know. There was. There is. I'm trying to remember if he took his electronic rig to this. There was something that we did in Bochum, Germany, gosh, I think this was like maybe in 2006 or 5, where it was the Rural Trinale series, which Bill and Lee Townsend curated. And so I was in that band with Ron Miles, I think Jenny Scheinman and Matt, and then the featured guest was Elvis Costello. And and it was like, I remember being done with that show, and it's like, how can we make every day like that?
Hmm.
It's just such a fun show to kind of go.
Make every day like that in that.
It's just a musical high,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. How can you aspire to continue? Yeah. Well, all the people you've worked with and the level of people that you work with, do you, I know, do you find that, usually you agree musically with the people you work with because of a rapport, or do you find sometimes you have to really compromise?
Oh gosh. I don't know. That's a good question. I think with people that you admire, usually it's, even if you don't hit it off right off the bat, you have to kind of respect what they're doing, or
Mhm.
if or you have to kind of respect their vision, even if you don't have it in common with you.
Yeah.
Um, or I think a lot of the time, if I'm called to do something, hopefully they've heard what I've done in the past, and so they know what they're getting, and they're casting me to be that actor,
Mhm.
to deliver something. And hopefully, like a lot of the time, you can know that something isn't going to be really, it may not be a great marriage right away if somebody calls you and says, hey, I need a bass player for this,
Mhm.
a bass player, not to be an egomaniac or anything like that, but a lot of the time, then sometimes, I'll start asking questions, and I'll say, well, this is what I do, and I can do this, but I, just want to make sure that you want me.
It's nice to be straightforward and really make sure it's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, somebody will ask me if I want a bowed section, like an arco section to something, and I'll be the first to say that I'm not necessarily your guy for that. And I'll
Mhm.
say, call this person, or call, if you want Edgar Meyer, you're not going to get it from me, you
Mhm.
know.
So
Just
does that,
because,
do you not like to do that at all, or is it more just that that's their focus?
well, I don't. It's funny. Yeah, I don't. I get really nervous about it, because I think I can't always tell when I'm achieving what they want.
Mhm.
Like, and especially for Bo, I don't think I ever developed the control enough to go, you know, I'm 100% confident in this. And even though I played in the orchestra in college for a little bit,
Mm.
but I kind of figured out, like, well, it was only actually one semester, and then I realized, okay, this isn't going to be my path.
Yeah, yeah. Are there people you've worked with who you admired who you really felt nervous working with them because you admired them so much?
Yeah, I mean, more socially than playing.
Mm.
Like if it's somebody that I go, gosh, just if I start to internalize all their body of work and it's stuff that I love, then I might be a little more shy,
Mhm.
just interaction. Or, like I think maybe earlier, like as I've gotten older, I've got to go, okay, well, I need to deliver, and I need them to feel that they're going to be confident in what I'm going to offer, and
Mhm.
want to keep what I recorded for them,
Yeah.
versus replacing it later on. And
How do you do that, or what mindset how do you get into that mindset?
well, I don't know. I don't know. It's funny. Somebody asked me that before too. Where like, how do you get past nerves of being in a room full of people that have all this time behind them,
Mhm.
or complete pros. And I think it's almost kind of like thinking, I don't know. Like I always think, you got this. You know, it's almost kind of like I hear those words as I know that we're going in to record,
Mhm.
um, going, okay, well, I'll be able to get this. And
Uh-huh.
feeling confident. I am confident enough to go, okay, this will be okay. And what's the worst that can happen, you
Yeah.
know? Or, be aware or be apologetic if you make a mistake, and, and say, okay, I need that, but also be immediately aware of where that happened so you can tell the engineer and they can correct it immediately and get to it, and, have it be erased from everyone's memory as quickly as possible.
Uh, yeah. So it sounds like you're used to working quick as well, which is something that a lot of people talk about with Nashville studio musicians. Was that something that was natural for you, or is it more of a skill that you learned?
Gosh, I think it developed over time. I was thinking some of the earlier ones, earlier, like when I first moved here, I probably didn't deliver quite as quickly. You know, and it's interesting. I find that most of the time, the first time will be a little reckless. The second time will almost be the the take to use. The third take, I'm starting to maybe start imitating myself,
Hmm.
and it can certainly go beyond that. And once I'm doing stuff at home, doing recording remotely and sending them files, I'll usually give them like 5 passes, so
Hmm.
they have choices of reckless to completely worked out.
If you're imitating yourself, is that at the point? Does it feel like it's losing some spontaneity? Is that why that's not the
Yeah,
take? Uh-huh.
yeah. Or I feel like something went really well, and then sometimes it doesn't feel as genuine. It feels a little more thought out,
Uh-huh.
like it feels less like a reaction and feels more like a written part.
Yeah. So I've from listening to other interviews, I believe I've heard you say that Led Zeppelin is a
Oh
huge
gosh, yeah.
influence, and you love Zeppelin. So what was it like to meet and to work with Robert Plant? Uh,
Oh gosh. Well, that's, talk about being like not being able to say anything and just feeling like, don't want to say anything stupid. And the first time that I worked with him, it was I ended up playing guitar on the show, not bass, which is,
hmm.
gosh, I mean, like how strange is, I mean, like how, that legacy of guitar players, you know,
Yeah.
Jimmy Page being like kind of like an ultimate hero, and then Robbie Blunt, and, and then everyone that followed that, you know, those are some heavy shoes. And, but he's like a total sweetheart, and makes you feel like, even prior to playing with him, and where I'd met him with my sister, he's such a sweet guy, and just like, even if it's people that he doesn't know, he will make sure to have eye contact at some point with everybody in the room, to make
Hmm.
them feel like, okay, you are included in this.
Hmm.
And the thing that I did with him a few years ago was we did the Kennedy Center honors thing for Lead Belly,
Uh-huh.
and so we're on the airplane, and he says, "Oh, can I carry something for you?" And it's just like, it's just, he has every right to be the superstar that he is, but
It's
turns out
it's
to be a very
it's
nice.
it's really nice to hear that.
Yeah.
To hear when get to be around heroes, and they're really kind, good people. It's Do you find that people in general of that sort of caliber are, nice to be around?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Almost, I would say 80 to 90% of the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like Dean Parks is another hero, guitar hero for me. You
Hmm.
know, and he's been on everything. I mean, he's like probably got one of the longest. He and Jim Keltner may have the longest all music guide, you know, page credit listings, and just a sweet guy. And you ask him what he's doing, and like, well, how did you play this? There's no ego in terms of
Hmm.
revealing any kind of secret that he doesn't want to give. Out of ego, he's happy to tell you. You know, I think realizing, he's not going to, even if he told you exactly the settings, gave you the guitar, you put the guitar in the hand, you're not going to recreate exactly what he did. You
Hmm.
know, so I
Yeah.
don't know. I was trying to do that, like in terms of when people ask about what rig or equipment I use, I said, tell them everything. It's there's could be nice, nice to know what all that background stuff is.
Yeah. Have you worked with Jim Keltner?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was that like? And what is he like?
Oh, he's great. The first record I did with him was the Bill Frisell trio record, Gone Just Like a Train.
Mm.
And then the follow-up one was with Good Dog Happy Man, and then there was a couple other film soundtrack things, and a Jacob Dylan record that didn't end up coming out years ago. But yeah, he's been on some Lyle stuff. But yeah, he's wonderful.
Mm.
And it's another one of those things like Matt. I remember when we were rehearsing for that Bill Frisell trio album, it was we were playing in a rehearsal hall. I was like, yeah, this is nice. And but it wasn't until we got the headphones on and his awareness of the recorded sound for him, it's just like, oh my, that there's depth, and he's got these different crazy drums that are you're not going to see really anywhere else. Or he's got this, this crazy, some kind of animal skin drum, bass drum, and then he was into Mastro snare drums, which were these Bakelite snare drums, plastic snare drums that you could get for a little while. And then he had this other thing called snoms that which
Never
was,
heard of that.
yeah, well, essentially what they were just small toms, usually like really small ones
Mm.
that he would have snares attached to them. So then suddenly he's got snares on every tom and different sounds. And he had a bunch of that on that Gone Just Like a Train record.
It sounds like each of these drummers has a unique sonic palette as well as their own feel and ideas and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then working with Russ Kunkel for years with Lyle has just been, that's a dream too, just the classic, he invented those type of drum, those tom fills, and just the sound he gets. Like I remember playing with him. I'd actually I recorded with him first before playing live. And and it was just like,
with Lyle or with someone else?
Yeah, with Lyle.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember it was a Tonight Show appearance that we did, and it was the first time I'd actually played with him live. It was always recorded, and then like when he was playing, it was just like, oh wow, he sounds exactly the same, in that wonderful way, Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you feel like when you start playing with musicians at that level, do you feel like you started to think about rhythm differently or feel rhythm differently, or has it always been something that's just been something that you focused on?
I mean, as far as the other players are concerned,
Or just as far as maybe the way you feel it or your concept of it, as well as the other players.
if it's changed over time.
Do you think you play rhythmically any differently, if you listen to yourself 30 years ago as opposed to then 20 years ago or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know if that's kind of, I don't know. Everyone's kind of different than. Yeah, I mean, well, this is funny. I really got into AC/DC in college,
Mm-hmm.
and like I had kind of a different sense, like when I started listening to that whole group as a whole, knowing that there were so many variations on how you could approach a downbeat, even if you're playing 16th notes, you know, to whether or not to kind of set it back or set it forward. And I don't know. I think that kind of changed by playing a little bit, and then I don't know. I mean, like, and then so much playing over time, playing it with a click. I never played that much with a click before moving here, and now that I play with a click, it feels like, I don't have become reliant on it, but I've become better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And or to try to figure out, okay, how do you analyze somebody who's not playing with the click versus playing with the click, or how do you work with a drummer that's sitting on maybe the back side or the front side of the beat while playing with the click, trying to stay within those parameters, and having it make sense.
Yeah.
The thing that I had to be at 6 is now saying 6:30, so I can go a little longer.
Oh, okay. I was about to say we can.
Let me tell him that that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well, I really appreciate you talking with me, and I will this will be, I'll post this on YouTube and then share it to Facebook and make sure that I share it to you.
Yeah.
And so do you, when do you think, do you I know this is kind of not, no one knows for sure, but do you have an idea of when you're going to be back out on the road again?
I don't know. It's I've heard rumors of different things, and I think until we know for sure, and like, I don't know who would come to a concert these days,
Yeah.
and
So
whether or not, you decide to go on a tour, whether or not it's going to, yeah, I mean, even if it's going to recoup or anything like that. And
yeah.
uh,
And so when you recorded with Jeff Coffin and Jordan Pearlson, what kind of precautions would you take? How have you been when you have interacted with people in person? How are you doing that so you can feel good about it and feel safe?
well, I don't know, just to kind of do what everybody's saying what to do, just wear a mask as much as you possibly can and wash your hands. I
Hmm.
think that's almost you really all you can do,
Hmm.
and as I don't know, it seems like it's getting, there are more cases of it, and I don't know, it's hard as a musician to come to a complete screeching halt when, yeah, so just to be as careful as you possibly can,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
Yeah. And it can mean different things for different people too.
Yeah.
Just been an interesting thing. My family, my wife and son, we're been planning for months and months to see my mom, and so we're like trying to figure out like, okay, if we all quarantine, can we create a bubble? And it's, everybody has different rules, so we had to really discuss what that would look like and what that means. Like, no, we're not even going into the grocery store right now, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Well, and our kids are all in school, they're all going to school,
mhm.
and so, you know, they're all exposed to whatever, and they probably bring home something, but fortunately we've been lucky thus
Mhm.
far, and just hopefully we can, I think that's, if that's a proven thing, to I don't have a problem wearing a mask, and sometimes, when it's cold out, I forget to take it off.
Yeah, it'll keep the face a little warmer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. And is there anything you want to tell people about that they can check out? Either live broadcasts or
Oh,
recordings or anything that you're working on.
oh gosh, anything that pertains to me. I don't know. The record that Maeve and I did years ago was Maeve Gilchrist and I was, it was a duo record, not a duet record, but it was, lots of overdubs and that kind of stuff. That was
Mm,
a record called Vignette.
yeah,
And then my other solo albums are, one is called Far From Enough, and then my second one was called Two, like Roman numeral two, paying homage to Led Zeppelin 2.
okay,
And
cool.
and then the record that you were playing before was that modular record, which was a trio recording. That was an interesting record because it was, that was Matt Chamberlain and Dan Phelps and I, and we had no material ahead of time. We just actually went to a studio in Ferndale, California, and just made up a whole bunch of stuff for about a week,
Oh,
and
wow.
and that's kind of what we came up with.
And then,
And
and then you chose your favorites and but
yeah,
no,
yeah.
all live played together.
Yeah, oh, I've lots of overdubs after the
Uh,
fact. It was, I played as much piano as I did bass on that
oh,
one.
wow.
And
And was any of it to a click or was it all to a click?
I think most of it was. Yeah.
Making it easier to do the overdubs and
Yeah, in editing and that kind of stuff. And yeah.
yeah. Oh, I look forward to delving into that. I have the Vignettes album. I saw you all play at that that place on Charlotte Avenue. I
Oh, the
forget what.
studio. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually met Brian, the Brian who plays with Emmylou Harris, and we've become friends since then. He was just super friendly, and it's like, hey, let's get together. And so anyway, so
Brian Owings.
yeah, Brian Owings,
Yeah, yeah.
such a cool guy.
Yeah, he's a
Um,
really nice guy.
yeah. So not only did I enjoy that concert, but it got, made a new friend from going to it. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I apologize for the technical problems and
No,
not
no.
doing this live, but I will stay in touch and connected because I am definitely at some point gonna see if I can get you to play on something of mine. So,
Yeah, that'd be great.
yeah. Well, have a good evening, and I'll I'll be following what you're up to on Facebook and all that.
Great. Thank you so much for again for having me.